Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today, we're plunging into, well, a truly fascinating realm, the incredible, often untapped power of our own minds. We're embarking on an in-depth exploration of Joseph Murphy's transformative classic, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind.
Yeah, it's a big one.
It really is. This isn't just a book. For decades, it's served as like a practical blueprint for countless individuals seeking to live, gloriously, joyously, and abundantly.
It truly has. Joseph Murphy, well, he was a really prolific author, lecturer, and a minister within the New Thought movement.
Right, New Thought.
Yeah, which is this whole philosophical and spiritual current that really emphasizes the power of positive thinking and that mind-body connection. His work, especially this book, it kind of distills principles as old as time, drawing on wisdom from all sorts of places, spiritual traditions, ancient philosophies, even early psychology. Murphy really believed in making these complex metaphysical ideas accessible, and actionable, giving clear methods for personal transformation.
Exactly. And our mission today is to unpack the core ideas of this, while profound work, and understand its overarching significance, and maybe most importantly, uncover how you, our listener, can actually harness these concepts.
Yeah, move beyond theory.
Right, into tangible application in your own life. Murphy famously says there's a treasure house of infinity within you, like a gold mine you can tap into for everything you need for a truly fulfilling life.
Yeah.
What's really striking is his observation that this huge power often remains unknown to so many people, leaving them metaphorically sound asleep to their own potential.
Indeed, he uses this really vivid analogy, a magnetized piece of steel.
Oh, yeah.
It can lift maybe 12 times its own weight, but if you demagnetize it, it won't even lift a feather.
Wow.
And similarly, he talks about the magnetized man, someone full of confidence, conviction, faith, knows they're born to win, versus the demagnetized man who's just full of fears, doubts, anxieties.
So it's about our internal state.
Totally. And the core message, what Murphy calls the master secret of the ages, well, it isn't some complicated science thing like atomic energy or space travel. It's the profound, yet really simple, law of your own mind. Specifically, the law of belief.
So, wait, it's not about what you believe in, necessarily, but the act of believing itself. Is that the key? That feels like a really powerful distinction.
Precisely. It's the belief within your own mind that actually creates your reality, your experiences, the events that unfold, your conditions, your actions. They are, he argues, direct reactions, manifestations of your subconscious mind just responding to your thoughts.
Okay.
He really stresses that if you consistently keep your conscious mind busy with concepts like harmony, health, peace, goodwill, well, then wonders will start to happen in your life. It's not just wishful thinking. It's a fundamental principle of how our inner world shapes our outer reality.
So what does this mean for us, practically speaking, like day to day? It sounds like understanding how our internal landscape, our thoughts, directly influence our external circumstances. And Murphy's book is our guide today to navigate this mental terrain. So let's unpack this, maybe starting with the very foundation he lays out, this duality of the mind. How does he break down this thing we just call our mind?
Right. So Murphy introduces this really crucial concept right from the start.
Right.
The duality of the mind. While we feel like we have just one mind, he explains it possesses two distinct characteristics or functions.
Okay.
He mainly calls them the conscious and subconscious minds, but he also uses other interesting pairs like objective and subjective mind, waking and sleeping mind, even surface self and deep self. Each pair kind of highlights a different facet of their unique roles.
That distinction itself is powerful, isn't it? It makes you reevaluate how you even think about your own thoughts. So what's the core difference between these two aspects in his view?
He uses several vivid metaphors, to illustrate it. But maybe the most relatable one, the most clear, is the ship analogy.
Yes, the ship.
He says your conscious mind is the captain and master on the bridge. This is the part of you that's awake, aware, rational. It makes decisions, analyzes stuff, plans, gives orders, like a ship's captain using charts and instruments. It's where your will and reason sit.
Okay, conscious mind is the captain. Then the subconscious mind is...
The men in the engine room, they don't question the captain's orders, they just obey. No analysis, no debate. So if the captain gives faulty instructions, maybe based on bad readings or fear, the ship will inevitably hit the rocks. Why? Because the crew in the engine room, representing the subconscious, they're non-selective.
Non-selective, that's key.
It's critical. The subconscious accepts as true whatever the conscious mind feeds it, whether those instructions are logical, good for you, or even objectively true. It doesn't argue. It doesn't sit there proving if your thoughts are good or bad, true or false. It just responds according to the nature of your thoughts or suggestions. It's like this super powerful, literal-minded servant. It doesn't ask, is this a good idea or is this true? It just says, you thought it, you felt it, so I'll execute it.
So if our conscious mind, the captain, is consistently thinking about harmony, health, peace, goodwill, then wonders happen. But what if we're sending negative commands? Even casually, like, oh, I could never afford that bag, or I always wake up at 3 a.m. if I drink coffee after dinner. How does that play out?
That's a perfect way to see this principle at work. Murphy gives this memorable example of a young university student. She desperately wanted an expensive traveling bag.
Okay.
And she was just about to say that common phrase, I can't afford that bag. But then she remembered Murphy's teaching. Immediately reverse negative statements. So she consciously affirmed, that bag is mine. I accept it mentally, and my subconscious sees to it that I receive it. She repeated this simple affirmation with conviction. Hours later, it's Christmas Eve, her fiancé unexpectedly gifts her the exact bag she'd visualized.
No way.
Yeah. It perfectly illustrates that the subconscious mind is the know-how of accomplishment. It doesn't worry about how something will happen. It just takes that mental acceptance as a directive and gets to work, often in ways you couldn't consciously figure out.
It's genuinely mind-bending to think that our thoughts about, I don't know, a cup of coffee could have such a literal physical effect. Or that funny example about not liking mushrooms.
Right.
Your conscious mind decides the boss me doesn't like mushrooms, and your subconscious just takes that as gospel. So if you accidentally eat them, bam, indigestion. It really shows how your subconscious is always working for what it thinks is your benefit, pouring all the food of your habitual thinking into your lap.
Precisely. It takes you at your word. No sense of humor, no irony. And think about that woman who always wakes up at 3 a.m. after coffee.
Yeah.
Her subconscious, once given that suggestion, maybe just from one past experience, it literally nudges her awake. Like saying, hey, the boss wants you to stay awake tonight.
Just obeys.
It accepts. And this means if you've been conditioned by negative suggestions since you were a kid, like you're not smart enough or you'll never amount to anything, your subconscious has likely accepted them as truths.
Oh, man.
So the remedy then becomes, well, consistent repetition. Constructive, harmonious thoughts to form new, healthy habits. Basically, repatterning the subconscious to accept new, empowering directives.
Okay, that makes sense.
Which raises a really important question. If the subconscious is that powerful and that suggestible, how did people historically use it for healing? Even without fully understanding, the mechanics of it all.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Murphy dedicates a whole chapter to this, doesn't he? The miracle working power of your subconscious. He describes it as this silent, unseen force that inspires, guides, controls all the vital processes, heartbeat, digestion.
Incredible stuff.
Even turning bread into tissue and bone. Things way beyond our conscious grasp. He points out how great scientists often got answers in their sleep, or artists like Raphael painted masterpieces, or Beethoven composed, by tapping into this deeper well.
Accessing that power.
But what's really fascinating is how he connects this innate miracle-working power to historical healing practices across different cultures, different times.
That's where it gets really interesting,
Yeah.
He talks about ancient temples, like those of Aesculapius in Greece. Priests would give patients drugs, use hypnotic suggestions before sleep, telling them gods would visit and heal them in their dreams.
Yeah, it worked.
Healings frequently followed, apparently. Or think about the, almost grotesque procedures of Hecate devotees mixing lizards and resin under a crescent moon.
Weeks.
Again, with reported healings. Murphy's argument is that in all these cases, it wasn't the external stuff, the rituals, the specific drugs, the weird mixtures that did the healing.
So what was it?
It was the potent suggestions to the subconscious mind and the blind belief of the sick person that released the healing power within them. The rituals were just powerful ways to appeal to the imagination, prepping the subconscious to accept the idea of healing.
So the actual healer was always the subconscious mind itself. It was just responding to a really powerful, deeply accepted suggestion. Wow. He gives that stunning example, the one that was medically authenticated, of Madame Beer in France.
Oh, and Lourdes, right.
Yes, she regained her sight. But her optic nerves were verified by doctors as atrophied, useless. She was basically seeing with dead eyes.
Incredible.
Yet through her profound faith And the potent suggestions of that sacred place, she experienced this spontaneous healing. And months later, they re-examined her, and the seeing mechanism was restored to normal. Murphy explicitly says she was healed by her own subconscious mind, which responded to her belief.
Which goes right back to that core principle.
According to your belief, is it done unto you?
Exactly.
And this isn't just about ancient history or faraway miracles. Murphy shares a really powerful personal story that clearly shaped his whole understanding. Over 40 years before writing the book, he resolved a skin malignancy on his hand.
Through prayer, after medicine failed. Exactly. After medical therapy failed, he describes how he deliberately gave life-giving patterns of wholeness, beauty, and perfection to my subconscious mind. And that obliterated the negative images and thought patterns, which he believed were the root cause.
So he changed the mental blueprint.
Yes. He emphasizes nothing appears on your body except when the mental equivalent is first in your mind. And as you change your mind by drenching it with incessant affirmatives, you change your body. This is the basis of all healing. It's a deeply personal testament.
He also tells that moving story of the Protestant minister in Johannesburg with lung cancer.
Oh, right.
This minister took a really systematic approach. He'd relax his body completely, like talk to each part. My feet are relaxed, my ankles are relaxed, until his whole being felt relaxed.
Getting into that state.
Exactly, that deeply sleepy, drowsy state where conscious resistance is low, and then he'd affirm, the perfection of God is now being expressed through me. The idea of perfect health is now filling my subconscious mind.
And what's truly remarkable about his approach, the minister's, is that he went beyond just words. He didn't just affirm.
What else did he do?
He engaged his imagination. He pictured himself perfectly healed, actually living that role. He'd visualize himself back in his office, answering the phone, feeling the reality of being recovered.
Like method acting for healing.
Kind of.
Yeah.
It shows that the healing power responds so powerfully to sustained mental imagery and, crucially, the feeling of already having what you desire. His focus was so strong that one day, the phone rang unexpectedly. His wife and nurse were out. He spontaneously got up, walked 12 feet, and answered it. This physical movement showed his legs, weakened by illness, were healed. He could walk. It showed the power flowed through his focused attention, breaking the mental block that stopped brain impulses reaching his legs. It really underlines that whatever you impress on your subconscious gets expressed as conditions, experiences, events.
Okay, so if our thoughts are the building blocks, Murphy doesn't just leave us there. He gives us the blueprints, the practical methods. He says methods and techniques are primary for governing your life, just like an engineer needs methods to build a bridge.
Right, you need a process.
Your mental home, your life experiences, depends entirely on the mental building blocks you use. He's saying, just like an engineer needs a clear blueprint and good materials, you need a clear mental blueprint for your life. Consciously building health, success, happiness, moment by moment with your thoughts, ideas, beliefs. So what are some of these techniques he lays out?
He offers quite a comprehensive toolkit, really, each one designed to effectively impress your subconscious. One really powerful one is the visualization technique. He also calls it the mental movie method.
Mental movie, I like that.
Yeah. And William James, the father of American psychology, he stressed that the subconscious brings to pass any picture held in the mind and backed by faith. Murphy himself used this. He wanted a permanent place for his lectures in L.A. He didn't just wish. He vividly imagined talking to a big, receptive audience, feeling the reality of it, mentally saying, I'm glad to be here. I prayed for this ideal opportunity.
And did it work?
Shortly after, he got an unexpected offer to take over an organization in the Midwest, which then led to a permanent ideal spot. He also tells that story about the young lady wanting a Cadillac.
Oh, yeah.
She consistently visualized driving it, feeling the upholstery, smelling the leather, until it manifested through an inheritance from her uncle. The key is engaging all your senses, your emotions, in that mental picture.
Then there's the Baudouin technique, named after Professor Charles Baudouin from the Nancy School of Hypnotism. What's the approach here?
The subtle brilliance here is entering that drowsy, sleepy state, that halfway point between waking and sleeping.
Yeah, just before you nod off.
Exactly. It minimizes conscious effort and that logical part of your brain that argues. Then you condense your desire into a brief, easy phrase and repeat it gently, like a lullaby.
Like a lullaby.
Yeah. The example of the young woman in that bitter lawsuit over a will is powerful. For 10 nights in that drowsy state, she just repeated, "It is finished," in divine order, focusing on feeling peace and resolution.
What happened?
On the 11th day, a harmonious settlement was reached. often through ways you couldn't predict. It's like planting a seed directly into the subconscious soil.
Okay. And building on that is the sleeping technique. Sounds similar.
Very similar. It specifically emphasizes the power of that drowsy state right before sleep. Murphy explains that by getting into that relaxed, semi-conscious state, the conscious mind's critical thinking is way down.
So the subconscious takes over.
It reigns supreme, as he puts it. It's about lullabying yourself to sleep with the idea of your answered prayer, deeply impressing the outcome without arguing with yourself about it. Which is also why, he notes, our bodies tend to heal faster during sleep. Less conscious interference, more subconscious restoration.
Makes sense. Then there's the thank you technique based on the Apostle Paul saying, make requests with praise and thanksgiving.
Exactly. He tells the story of Mr. Brooke, aptly named, who was deeply in debt.
Okay.
Every night and morning, he just repeated, "Thank you, Father, for my wealth," over and over, until a genuine feeling of thankfulness and abundance took over his mind.
So he wasn't asking for wealth, he was thanking for it.
Yes. Assuming it was already real within the infinite power of his subconscious, what happened? He ran into a former employer, got a great new position, and a temporary loan that cleared his debts. It's about assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled with gratitude.
Wow. Okay, next, the affirmative method. This is about stating a truth, knowing it's already true, even if reality looks different right now.
Precisely. It's not about trying to make something true, but aligning yourself with an existing eternal truth, like health is normal, harmony is normal.
Right.
Murphy used this to heal his sister of gallstones from 6,500 miles away. He described how he deliberately stopped thinking about her symptoms and instead just affirmed her perfect health, peace, harmony, repeatedly stating that the healing intelligence of her subconscious was transforming every cell. 2 weeks later, her medical exam and x-rays were clear. Negative. He emphasizes that your thought can only affirm, for even if you deny something, you are actually affirming the presence of what you deny. It's about speaking life into being.
Fascinating. Then we has the argumentative method from Dr. Phineas Parkhurst Quimby, pioneer in mental healing.
Yeah, Quimby's approach. This involves a kind of spiritual reasoning, like an internal mental debate where you convince yourself or a patient of the truth of health and wholeness, like a lawyer making a compelling case.
Okay.
You mentally present the case for health, overwhelming any evidence to the contrary with your inner conviction of basically liberating the sick person through faith and understanding. It's an active mental persuasion process.
And the absolute method. This sounds more meditative.
It is. Many people use this with great results. You mentally mention the patient's name, and then you just quietly contemplate God's qualities, boundless love, infinite intelligence, harmony, perfection. You don't ask for anything specific.
So what does that do?
This deep contemplation generates, as Murphy puts it, spiritual electronic waves of harmony, health, and peace that get transmitted through the universal mind. Dr. Quimby apparently used this to heal a crippled woman. He felt she was imprisoned by a creed of fear. He activated the creative power of God within her by shifting her mental state through understanding. She had this instantaneous sensation, walked without her crutches, her mind freed from its self-imposed limits.
Incredible stories. And finally, the decree method, back to the power of our words.
Yes, Murphy quotes Job. "Thou shalt decree a thing, and it shall be established unto thee." This isn't just wishing. It's making a definite mental statement with unwavering conviction, a sense of authority, knowing the subconscious will bring it into manifestation.
So these aren't just random ideas, they're systematic approaches, a whole toolkit. What's the key why behind them all working? What's the common thread?
The underlying principle, the core mechanism, is that your thought fused with feeling becomes a subjective faith or belief. Once your subconscious accepts an idea, health, wealth, anything, it immediately starts executing it, using all its immense resources.
Whether the idea is good or bad.
Exactly. Constructive or destructive, it doesn't matter to the mechanism. So the crucial part is cultivating confident conviction and avoiding mental coercion. Trying too hard, forcing it, can actually block the answer.
Why is that?
Because it signals fear and anxiety. It basically tells your subconscious, I don't really believe you have the answer. It needs relaxed expectation, not forceful effort.
Okay, that's a really important nuance. Now, Murphy doesn't just stop at healing or personal problems. He takes these principles into the realms of success and wealth, offering ideas that really challenge how we usually think about prosperity.
He definitely does.
He says wealth is fundamentally a subconscious conviction. Not just about external actions, but what you believe you're worth, what you habitually think and feel about abundance.
Exactly. He hammers this home. You won't become a millionaire just by chanting, "I am a millionaire," if, deep down, you feel broke.
Right.
Instead, you cultivate wealth consciousness. You systematically build the idea of wealth and abundance into your mentality, impressing it deeply onto the subconscious. Because the feeling of wealth produces wealth.
The feeling produces it.
Yeah. He compares the subconscious to a bank, like a universal financial institution that magnifies whatever you deposit or impress upon it, whether it's the idea of wealth or the idea of poverty. The problem most people have, he says, is they have no invisible means of support. When things go wrong externally, they feel helpless because they haven't learned to tap into that inexhaustible subconscious reservoir.
That brings up a really common question, though. Why do affirmations for wealth sometimes fail? People repeat them endlessly. It seems simple, but they don't see results.
Murphy has a very clear explanation for that. He says people often feel they are lying to themselves.
The internal conflict.
Precisely. If you affirm, "I am prosperous," but consciously, deep down, based on your bills and bank balance, you feel it's not true, your conscious mind, the captain, rejects it. Or at least it creates a big mental argument.
So how do you get around that?
The key is to avoid contradicting your subconscious directly. Instead of "I am wealthy," which might trigger that internal debate, he suggests something more subtle, less likely to cause resistance. Try affirming something like, "I am growing into wealth consciousness by day and by night, and I am being prospered in all of my interests."
So it's about the process, the becoming.
Exactly. It doesn't create that argument because it acknowledges a journey, not a fixed state that feels false to your conscious mind. He gave this exact advice to a businessman whose sales were down. The guy repeated, "My sales are improving every day," and consistent positive results followed. His business turned around.
He also gives a very specific warning about condemning or criticizing other people's wealth, doesn't he? He calls envy a stumbling block to wealth.
He does. He says, the quickest way to cause wealth to take wings and fly away is to criticize and condemn others who have more wealth than you. It's like praying for wealth while mentally rejecting and resenting it in others. You're sending conflicting signals.
So what's the antidote to envy, according to him?
To genuinely rejoice in another person's prosperity. If you see a competitor doing well or someone you know hits it big financially, instead of feeling that pang of envy, Murphy advises consciously saying to yourself, "Isn't it wonderful? I rejoice in that person's prosperity. I wish them even greater wealth."
That takes practice.
It does, but it aligns your subconscious with a positive flow of wealth. It attracts it to you instead of pushing it away. And he also broadens the whole idea of success. It's not just money. He defines it as successful living. Much more holistic.
And what's essential for successful living?
Peace of mind. True success, he insists, is ultimately contingent upon peace of mind. He gives that great example of Henry Flagler, the oil magnate. Flagler would close his eyes, imagine the entire oil industry completed, seeing trains, hearing whistles, feeling the fulfillment. His subconscious then worked to bring it about.
So it's not just about struggling and the sweat of your brow in the usual sense.
Not according to Murphy. He advocates for the effortless way of life. Doing what you love, letting your subconscious handle the heavy lifting, so to speak. He tells that inspiring story about the movie actor.
The one who started out mowing hay.
That's the one. As a young boy on a farm, he constantly imagined his name in big lights, kept that vision alive for years, ran away from home, struggled, and eventually, years later, saw his name in lights exactly as he'd imagined. It shows the power of sustained imagination to bring success.
And the pharmacist, too.
Yeah, the pharmacist earning a tiny salary. He vividly visualized himself in his own drugstore, mentally arranging bottles, filling prescriptions, seeing a big bank balance. He lived the role like an actor in his mind.
What happened to him?
He became a manager of a chain store and eventually owned his dream pharmacy. Intense, consistent visualization led to the outcome.
And then there's that truly incredible story about Dr. Lothar von Blank-Schmidt.
Oh, the physicist who escaped the concentration camp. Amazing story.
How did he do it using these principles?
He vividly imagined himself walking down Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles with his future wife. He made these mental pictures incredibly real, natural, constantly dwelling on them.
While still imprisoned.
Yes. Then one day during a head count, the guard got distracted, mistakenly skipped his number. He just walked out, undetected. Traveled for 24 hours, survived by fishing and hunting, reached Poland.
Unbelievable.
Eventually, he ended up staying with an American couple in Santa Monica, and their chauffeur drove him along the very boulevards he had imagined so vividly. It proved his subconscious had guided him to freedom through what seemed like a series of miracles. Truly, as Murphy says, the subconscious has ways we know not of.
That interconnectedness is just striking. Thoughts about wealth, health, success, they all operate through the same subconscious mechanisms. It really shows the holistic impact of our inner world.
Okay, let's explore how these principles extend into maybe the most complex areas. Relationships, overcoming fear, and even how we approach life itself, like aging.
Yes, the book dives deep into human relations, marriage problems, conquering fear, even staying young in spirit. He emphasizes that these same principles apply across the board, consistently. Murphy flat out asserts that ignorance of the functions and powers of the mind is the cause of all marital trouble.
Wow, that's a bold statement.
It is. He highlights that a real marriage has to first be spiritual, rooted in honesty, sincerity, kindness, integrity, not just based on external things like money, status, or ego. If the inner foundation is shaky, the external structure is bound to crumble.
He applies the golden rule internally too, right? Not just how we treat others, but how we think about them. Exactly. As you would that men should think about you, think you about them in like manner. This is absolutely critical because negative thoughts about others, resentment, condemnation, are like taking mental poisons. And who do they affect most?
Yourself.
Right.
No.
They affect you. These corrosive thoughts sink into your subconscious, causing problems in your own life, physical illness, strained relationships, you name it. He gives that example of the husband who got bleeding ulcers from constantly getting angry, reading newspaper columnists he disagreed with.
How did he heal?
By understanding that crucial point. It is never what a person says or does that affects him. It is his reaction to what is said or done that matters. He learned to disagree without being disagreeable, and he healed himself.
So the solution is always internal. It's about managing our own reactions.
Precisely. Always within your own mind. Think about that private secretary who intensely disliked the women in her office because she perceived gossip and negativity.
What did she do?
She started consciously, consistently radiating love and goodwill through a specific prayer. Affirming, I think, speak, and act lovingly, quietly and peacefully. I now radiate love, peace, tolerance, and kindliness to all the girls.
And her experience changed.
Completely. The criticism and annoyance she felt from others just stopped. Her realization. She discovered that there is no one to change but myself. This applies even to that salesman whose negative inner talk about his boss was blocking his promotion. When he changed his thoughts, wished his manager well, visualized, congratulations, his situation turned around, he got the promotion.
He gives specific advice for marital problems, too. Forgiving before sleep, radiating love, alternating in prayer.
Yes, reading passages from Psalms or spiritual texts together before sleep, creating a shared harmonious mental space. And his perspective on divorce is fascinating. Divorce takes place first in the mind, the legal proceedings follow after.
Meaning the breakdown starts internally.
Yeah. He describes a young couple where the husband constantly feared his wife would leave him, be unfaithful. That fear set in motion a law of action and reaction in his subconscious that eventually brought his fears into reality. The marriage dissolved.
He also addresses things like the nagging wife.
Right, often attributing it not to malice, but a subconscious craving for love and affection, a cry for attention, or the really profound idea of the adulterous mind.
What's that?
A man constantly resenting his wife is, psychologically speaking, committing adultery because he's mentally uniting with destructive thoughts, violating his inner vows of love and honor. It all points back to our internal state, and he wisely advises against discussing marital problems with neighbors or relatives. Their advice is often biased. Seek professional counsel instead.
Okay, let's shift to fear. Murphy called it man's greatest enemy. Behind failure, sickness, poor relationships, and he makes that key point. We're only born with two fears.
Yes. The fear of falling and the fear of noise. All other fears are acquired, learned, often unconsciously, from negative suggestions in childhood or from our environment.
So fear is basically just a thought in your mind. You're afraid of your own thoughts.
That's the critical distinction. And the core technique for overcoming any fear, Murphy says, is straightforward. Do the thing you are afraid to do.
Mentally first, or?
Well, not recklessly putting yourself in danger, but confronting the idea of the fear mentally, then taking action. He gives the example of a student with debilitating stage fright.
How do they overcome it?
By repeatedly affirming, I speak with poise and confidence, I am relaxed and at ease before every presentation, until that became their new internal reality. He also tells of a medical student with exam amnesia, paralyzing fear of forgetting facts under pressure. He overcame it by imagining his mother congratulating him on his great grades every night.
So visualization again.
Yes. For fear of water, you vividly imagine swimming confidently. For elevators, you mentally bless the elevator, see yourself riding peacefully. The principle is always, supplant it with a constructive thought. Confidence is greater than fear. Abnormal fear, he warns, is just letting your imagination run wild, creating doom scenarios like the businessman who feared bankruptcy and manifested it. As Job said, the thing I greatly feared has come upon me.
Finally, this idea of staying young in spirit forever. How does the subconscious fit in here?
Murphy reminds us that our subconscious mind never grows old. It's timeless, ageless, and endless. It's part of the universal mind, not burdened by calendar years or society's limiting beliefs about aging.
So it's our beliefs about aging that cause problems.
He fundamentally challenges that idea that age just means deterioration.
Yeah.
He argues it's the fear of time, not time itself, that harms us. He points to qualities like patience, kindness, truthfulness, humility, goodwill, peace, harmony, brotherly. These things never grow old.
Right.
If you cultivate and express these qualities, Murphy says you'll stay young in spirit no matter your physical age. He insists your gray hairs are an asset, representing wisdom, skill, experience, not something to hide. He points to people like this surgeon operating at 84 or George Bernard Shaw active at 90 as examples of continued mental and spiritual activity. He genuinely believed your most productive years could be 65 to 95.
Not a time for decline, but for new ventures.
Exactly. It's about keeping a youthful mental outlook, constantly learning, dreaming new dreams, pursuing interests. Retirement should be a new venture, he says, a time to do things you always wanted to. The body might slow, but the mind, fed with inspiration and positive expectation, stays vibrant. Be a producer, not a prisoner of limiting ideas about age.
Okay, we've covered a huge amount, but it's important to touch on how some of these ideas have been perceived, maybe misunderstood. The book itself mentions historical controversies around healing, like Franz Mesmer back in the 18th century.
Right, Mesmer and his animal magnetism. He believed this universal fluid flowed from healer to patient.
But investigations found otherwise.
Yeah, a commission in Paris, with Benjamin Franklin on it, investigated Mesmer. They admitted the effects patients did feel better, but found no evidence for his magnetic fluid theory. Their conclusion: the effects were due to the imagination of the patients.
Imagination. So, suggestion.
Exactly. And later, Dr. James Braid confirmed people could be hypnotized without magnets, reinforcing the power of suggestion and the patient's own mind.
So the miracles were real, but the explanation was off.
That seems to be Murphy's view, too. He consistently agrees with those findings. He says regardless of the specific ritual, drug, remedy, ancient rites, Lord's water, even a folk healer's splitter of wood trick, the subconscious mind of the subject was the healer.
It always comes back to the subconscious.
Always. It underscores his main argument. Belief is a thought accepted as true by the subconscious. And it's this one universal power resident in the subconscious mind that's doing the work. It's not the specific method or dogma, it's the blind belief of the sick person, which released the healing power resident in his subconscious mind. That explains why different belief systems can all manifest healing. It's the belief itself activating the power.
That also raises a huge point about responsibility for our thoughts. If the subconscious takes us literally, even when joking, we have to be so careful.
Extremely careful. What's fascinating and documented is that things like bloody stigmata or blisters could actually be induced by suggestion in deep hypnotic states.
Seriously?
Yeah, it proves the subconscious has direct, literal control over the body and interprets suggestions literally, even things that seem impossible consciously. Absolutely. Murphy gives a clear warning. You must make certain to give your subconscious only suggestions, which heal, bless, elevate, and inspire you. Remember that your subconscious mind cannot take a joke. It takes you at your word. It's powerful, but definitely double-edged.
If you keep saying, I can't, I'll never.
Your subconscious will work to make that true. It doesn't judge if the thought is good or bad, desirable or not. It just acts on the dominant impression. It's a mechanism, not a moral compass.
And he specifically calls out those common negative phrases, you can't, you'll fail, the world's going downhill, I'll never get over this. These are negative suggestions.
Exactly. And we might have unconsciously accepted them since we were kids, creating deep limiting patterns. These are heterosuggestions from others that, if we accept them, become our reality.
So what's the fix?
Constructive autosuggestion. That's the reconditioning therapy to counteract all that negative conditioning. He stresses again. Your subconscious does not engage in proving whether your thoughts are good or bad, true or false, but it responds according to the nature of your thoughts or suggestions. So if you've been soaked in negativity, you have the conscious power to systematically replace those impressions with positive, life-affirming ones. This applies everywhere: fears, relationships, health, spiritual well-being. It opens the door for huge internal shifts.
Okay, and that ties into forgiveness and removing mental blocks. Murphy gives these areas significant weight, calling them crucial for unlocking the subconscious mind's power. He says forgiveness of others is essential to mental peace and radiant health. Why is forgiveness such a non-negotiable?
Because, as he explains really clearly, things like resentment, condemnation of others, remorse, and hostility are behind a host of maladies ranging from arthritis to cardiac disease.
So negative emotions literally make you sick.
That's the core idea in psychosomatic medicine, how our mind affects our body. These toxic emotions create, as he puts it, inflamed and festering wounds in their subconscious minds. They literally poison your inner wellspring of life. So the remedy isn't just nice, it's necessary. Cut out and discard their hurts. Through genuine forgiveness, it's vital for your own well-being.
He calls forgiveness love in action, and the key ingredient is willingness.
Yes, the willingness to forgive. That's crucial. You don't have to suddenly like someone or hang out with them, but you must release them mentally and spiritually from the prison of your resentment.
Is there a technique for that?
He offers a specific one.
Yeah.
Quietly affirm. I fully and freely forgive name. I release him mentally and spiritually. I completely forgive everything connected with the matter. I am free, and he's just free. It is a marvelous feeling.
He stresses, once you truly forgive, you don't need to keep repeating it. Just wish them well if the thought comes up until that negative charge is gone.
And he has an acid test for forgiveness. He does. Do you still sizzle with negativity when you hear good news about the person who wronged you? If you feel that sting, he says, the roots of hatred are still there, playing havoc with you.
Ouch.
The goal is to reach a point where there's no sting or hurt anymore, like remembering an old physical pain but feeling nothing now. This is why to understand all is to forgive all. Understanding these mind laws means you stop blaming others and realize your own thoughts create your destiny. You take responsibility for your inner world.
And this connects directly to removing mental blocks, which often come from these unresolved resentments or limiting beliefs. He tells that story of Mr. Jones, the alcoholic who lost his family.
What a powerful story.
Mr. Jones learned to relax deeply, get into that drowsy, meditative state. Then he filled his mind with the picture of the desired end, a sober, reunited life. He'd imagine his daughter congratulating him on being free from addiction, feeling her hug, the reality of his new life.
A mental movie again.
Exactly. Repeated consistently, it gradually reconditioned his subconscious, cured his addiction, restored his family, even when things looked hopeless externally.
And Murphy explains the real cause of alcoholism isn't just physical craving. It's often negative and destructive thinking. A deep sense of inferiority, inadequacy, defeat, frustration. It's an escape from inner pain.
So the cure involves changing the thinking.
Yes. The cure is to systematically think of freedom, sobriety, and perfection, and to feel the thrill of accomplishment. Anchor your mind on the solution, not the problem. This applies to any destructive habit. Murphy says powerfully, when your desire to give up the bad habit is greater than your desire to continue, you are 51% healed already.
51%, that's hopeful.
It is. It's about anchoring your mind on freedom and peace. The subconscious then emotionalizes that and brings it about, dissolving the void the habit tried to fill.
Like the salesman, Mr. Block, who thought he had a jinx after losing a contract.
Right. He realized the trouble was in his own mind, an unconscious fear that other clients would cancel too, creating a self-fulfilling negative cycle.
How did he break it?
By affirming, I am one with the infinite intelligence of my subconscious. All my work comes to full fruition in divine order. He repeated it daily, built a new constructive habit pattern, and got back to being successful. It shows our fears are often just thoughts, and we can replace them with constructive opposites, literally changing our path. The big takeaway here, like in that Socrates story about the boy gasping for air, when you truly have an intense desire to overcome a block, make a clear-cut decision to change, victory is assured. It means fiercely refusing to let thoughts of hate, anger, fear rob you of peace and health. You identify your thoughts immediately with your goal: peace, health, inspiration, harmony, abundance, and the subconscious, your faithful servant, brings it to pass. It boils down to focused, unwavering intention and belief.
Wow. We have really covered a lot today, diving deep into Joseph Murphy's The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. unpacking how our inner world thoughts, beliefs profoundly shapes our outer reality. From healing, attracting wealth, to better relationships, conquering fear, even aging. The consistent message is just so clear. Your subconscious mind is this miracle working power, ready to respond to your conscious direction, accepting and magnifying whatever you impress on it, good or bad.
Absolutely. And the core actionable insight, the thing you can take away and use now, is deceptively simple but incredibly powerful. Constantly monitor and consciously direct your thoughts.
Be the captain.
Be the captain. Your subconscious takes you at your word. So discipline yourself. Fill your mind with constructive, harmonious, positive ideas. When you want something, vividly imagine the end result. Feel its reality as if it's already happened. And know confidently that your subconscious has the know-how to bring it about, often in surprising ways. Remember Murphy's mantra.
The feeling of health produces health. The feeling of wealth produces wealth.
Exactly. And true success, he reminds us, isn't just stuff. It's inner peace of mind.
And never, ever underestimate the power of forgiveness. Not just for others, but for yourself, too. Releasing those negative patterns through mental and spiritual forgiveness is non-negotiable. It's key to unlocking real healing and peace. It frees you from those inflamed and festering wounds of resentment that literally make you sick. As Murphy says, your life is what your thoughts make of it. It's empowering, yeah, but also a big responsibility.
The lasting value of this book, I really think, is its practical focus on self-mastery, inner control. It empowers you to stop being that demagnetized man, full of fears and doubts, just hesitant. And it offers a path to become a magnetized man, full of confidence and faith, knowing you truly are born to win and to succeed. It reminds us there's no true success without peace of mind. And by cultivating that inner peace, that consistent positive thought, we align ourselves with the universal life principle that's always working for our best.
So if you're looking to create a life with more radiant health, more success, more happiness, the journey really starts inside, by changing your internal blueprint. Your subconscious is always faithfully reproducing your habitual mental patterns. So, choose happiness, choose success, choose goodwill, and the outer world will inevitably start to reflect those inner choices.
And here's maybe a final thought to mull over as you go about your day. If your future is, right now, being sculpted in your subconscious mind based on your habitual thinking, what one thought, what one profound feeling, if you consistently held it, deeply felt it, would most dramatically transform your future, starting today?
Think about that. Until next time, keep exploring that treasure house within.